We are less than 1 year away from Apple launching a brand new iPhone and its first foldable iPhone, according to numerous credible sources out there. And with more information coming out each and every day, I kind of wanted to give you all an update on what we can expect to see from Apple's first folding iPhone. If you're thinking about getting a shiny new iPhone this holiday, or you really want to maybe switch to Android, maybe pick up a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold because Apple just doesn't offer what you might want, well, you might want to hold off because Apple has been developing its own foldable iPhone, and it's heavily rumored to be coming in September of 2026. According to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, Apple's foldable iPhone is similar in style to Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold, which means it's using a book-style folding mechanism rather than the clamshell design of the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip. Industry analyst Ming-Chi Kuo expects the foldable iPhone to measure between 9 and 9.5 millimeters when folded and around 4.5 to 4.8 millimeters when unfolded. More recently, Weibo-based leaker Instant Digital has said that the foldable iPhone will have the thickness of at least 4.8 millimeters. When folded, users will interact with a 5.5-inch outer display that is similar to a typical iPhone screen. Now, while unfolding it, this will reveal a 7.8-inch iPad-style screen. These dimensions have been corroborated by a few different sources, and according to one rumor, the inner folding display will be approximately the size of a piece of A6 paper, and it will use a 2713 by 1920 resolution, while the outer display will use a 2088 by 1422 resolution. Personally, I really like Google's Pixel Fold, so any of them really, the 10 being the most recent one. That outer screen seems to be the perfect in-hand fit and feeling. It's not too tall and narrow like what Samsung does with a lot of its Z Fold lineup. Samsung has improved that outer display of the Z Fold over the years, but it's still just a little bit too tall and narrow compared to what you're used to with a more traditional slab iPhone. With a 5.5-inch display, it seems like Apple is kind of going for that more traditional outer display, which is the right call in my opinion. You want that outer display to feel more like a normal phone, then you unfold it to a larger display when you need it. The inner display is said to be virtually crease-free, which is also huge, and thanks to Apple's use of a metal plate that can disperse and control the stress generated by bending the display, according to Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. Apple is said to be using liquid metal in the hinges to improve durability and help eliminate the screen creasing. Liquid metal, manufactured using a die casting process, has been chosen by Apple to address this common issue with other foldable devices, something that no one has really been able to do, at least none of the major ones that are sold in the United States. Citing supply chain sources, a Chinese site, UDN, says that Apple has solved the crease problem that has plagued most foldable smartphones, and the foldable iPhone will be the first crease-free foldable smartphone out on the market. This new iPhone will also reportedly have a titanium chassis with the hinge constructed from a combination of titanium and stainless steel. The frame itself will use a titanium alloy to prevent bending issues, a solution that has worked well for Apple's new ultra-thin iPhone Air. However, analyst Jeff Pugh believes that Apple is using aluminum and titanium, whereas Kuo believes a mix of stainless steel and titanium has been chosen. Either way, aside from the durability of the glass, the hinge is probably the next most important part of any good foldable experience. And so it needs to be durable and have flexible materials that are going to be lightweight so that it doesn't feel like a brick in your pocket. And so it'll be really interesting to see here what Apple, decides to go with and what materials Apple decides to use to engineer this hinge. The foldable iPhone is expected to include a dual lens rear camera system with a front-facing camera for both the folded and unfolded states, according to Ming-Chi Kuo. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman recently corroborated these reports that the device will have 4 cameras consisting of one front camera on the outer, one front camera on the inner, and 2 rear cameras as your main camera system. Prolific Weibo-based leaker Digital Chat Station claims that the rear dual lenses will be 48 megapixels each. Other sources have claimed that the inner display features an under-screen camera, while the outer display in the device's folded state will have a hole-punch camera. Now, personally, I think Apple needs to figure out a way to get its main flagship triple camera array inside of this iPhone very, very quickly, because if it doesn't come at the first gen, it needs to be in the next generation. I think a lot of people care about having the best possible cameras, which is why they go with the Pro over some of the other models, albeit the standard with the dual lens or the Air with just one single camera. So not having a telephoto lens on that back of the iPhone is going to be a deal breaker for some people, especially if it's coming in at a much higher price tag, which we do expect this to be, a higher end iPhone. Another big missing feature here is rumored to be Face ID. In efforts to save internal space, Apple will reportedly be removing the Face ID and bringing back Touch ID to the iPhone, just like it does on some of its iPads, by integrating it into the power button. Most Android foldables already do this, but also offer up some sort of face unlock, which is not as secure as Face ID and isn't often used, if at all, for like biometric or, payment authentication. They would usually resort to the fingerprint sensor that's built into the power button on the right side of the device. It'll be interesting to see if Apple offers up something similar. Maybe there will be some sort of face unlock to make it faster. Most of these fingerprint sensors on these smaller power buttons are just not good, in my opinion. And so I hope Apple comes up with something better here, because the lack of Face ID could also be another major deal breaker for some. Now, in terms of price, I am expecting this to be pretty expensive. Current reports put Apple's foldable iPhone somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 here in the US, making it Apple's most expensive iPhone yet. Some analysts think it could land closer to $1,800 to $2,000, while others expect it around $2,399. Now, the interesting part here is that Ming-Chi Kuo now says Apple's Hinge will cost far less than expected, about $70 to $80 instead of $100 plus, which many predicted, thanks to better assembly design and Foxconn's production scaling. Whether that savings translates to a lower retail price or just boosts Apple's margins still remains unclear, but either way, I'm expecting there to be some pretty big demand from Apple's diehard fan base that wants to try this new hardware if it lives up to the hype. Now, the foldable iPhone is already deep into development. We are expecting this to launch again at the end of 2026, so production should kind of hit at the second half of 2026 there, and we expect it to launch alongside Apple's iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max, leaving the standard 18 and whatever else Apple decides to launch in early 2027. So hopefully nothing slips and we get that alongside the Pros in 2026. And I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Is this something that you would ditch your current iPhone model for? Are you interested in a foldable iPhone and would you buy this? Let me know in those comments down below. This is Dan with MacRumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.